G'day, welcome back to the channel. Now, I promised you that I would do another follow-up video on these new rules, the final rule in the USA for remote ID, which dropped just the other day. I did my first thoughts after a brief perusal of the rule, and there's a lot of pages in that rule. There's a lot of them, so it takes a long time to go through it. And a lot of other people have done that. They've gone through the FPV Freedom Coalition. They did a very good Discord chat the other day, and that's up on YouTube. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video because they cover many of the points, answer all of the questions that I'm sure a lot of people have. And I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want to go and just, every man and his dog now is putting up videos about, the new remote ID rule explained, etc., etc. And by and large, they're all pretty good. Most people have gone through and looked at it. So there's no point in me doing this all again. So I want to come from a different angle. I want to come from the angle of, let's not worry so much about the rule, but the way it's been brought around and the community's reaction to the rule, because that's even more astounding to me than the rule that they finally rolled out. I've seen a lot of people in the community going, wow, this could have been much worse. It could have been much worse. We are so lucky that we don't have the network component of the remote ID, and we can put modules on our drones to do remote ID, so we can still build our own drones and that sort of stuff. And I'm thinking, you guys have been conned. I've seen this strategy so often before. I don't know, maybe I'm just old and cynical, but I tend to think a lot of people are a little bit naive about how this whole thing has been done. Now, I'm going to give you a bit of history here. Let's go back a little bit. Let's see what was involved. Why was it that we are where we are now? And let's go back to a few years back when there was an act called Section 336, which was a piece of legislation brought in by the government in the USA to say the FAA may not regulate the hobby. They saw the hobby as the domain of, we needed a little bit of freedom so kids could go and fly their toy planes and people could enjoy a hobby that's been harmless for so many years. It needed to be protected from the bureaucrats at the FAA. So they had a Section 336 and it prohibited the boys at the FAA from stuffing around with the hobby and making rules up for the hobby. Stick to the big planes, FAA. The hobby will take care of itself. And for decades it did. But then there was a group was formed of commercial drone representatives, people who wanted to get into this 0 to 400 foot airspace commercially, make money out of it. And there was a meeting and there was a thing called the ARC, which was a group of corporations and people representing different bodies that met and decided what was going to happen. Now the interesting thing is that at this stage and to this day, the vast majority of all unmanned aircraft activity in the world's airspace is conducted by people like you and me who fly models or drones. The recreational side of it is far bigger than the commercial side. We see all these press releases about company X, Y, and Z are going to launch drone delivery services or they're trialing this and trialing that. But the reality is if you go outside and look out your door now, you will not see a sky that is filled with drones because it's all make-believe at the moment. There's just nothing happening. You can't order a pizza and have it delivered by drone to your doorstep. It doesn't happen. Oh, it's going to happen, they say. But these companies that formed were represented on the ARC, and remember the hobby, I think, only got 1 or 2 seats on the ARC. Despite the fact we're in the vast majority in terms of use, we got tiny representation. So our voice counted for nothing, absolutely for nothing. But the ARC was formed. Section 336 was repealed due to commercial pressure. All these groups wanting to make money out of the airspace we were using, they convinced the government to repeal the protection that the hobby had. They kicked out Section 336. So now the FAA could come in and regulate us and make us register. And that's exactly what they did. So as soon as the FAA had the power to do so, they demanded that people register. And despite a little hiccup caused by, I think it was John Taylor, who sued the government and said, no, you can't do that. And he won his case. They just changed the rules so his case was effectively nullified. His win meant for nothing. So then the FAA said, well, you've got to register. You've got to register your planes and your model aircraft and your drones. And when challenged why, they told us, registration will solve the problem that we have. We have people flying these things in the wrong place. There's no accountability. If people fly near an airport and crash their drone, we can't trace that drone back to them. So you guys need to register to keep our skies safe. And we'll educate you at the same time. So registration will solve the problems that we have. So only $5 for 3 years, register. And I said to people, don't register. This is a thin end of a wedge. I've seen this strategy before. But people rolled up and now 1.7 million Americans have registered to fly drones and model aircraft. It's registered with the FAA and got their little registration number. 1.7 million. And so that was okay for a while. But now we had the remote ID bill came along and they said, you need to have remote ID on your drones so that they can be safe and people can be held accountable and we can trace them back to the owners. And I'm saying, hang on a minute. Wasn't this promise made for registration? Weren't we told that if you register, all of this would come true and suddenly there'd be no drones near airports, or if there were, you could catch the people that did it and whatever, and that the whole skies would be safer? But hang on, we registered and none of that happened. You lied to us, or you were just so naive that you thought it would happen and it didn't. But now you're coming back to us again and saying, remote ID will do it. But that's what you said about registration. So from where I stand, I believe that I'm happy to accept the FAA's word at face value the first time. Registration will solve this problem. Okay, that's right. We believe you. But it didn't. So we were lied to, or the FAA proved they were incompetent. They didn't, and in fact, they didn't do a risk assessment. They don't understand the nature of the problem, or the scope, or the magnitude of the problems. So obviously, they just plucking stuff out of their backsides and saying, this will fix it, this will fix it. And when it doesn't, nobody, well, I'm not surprised, but they seem to be surprised. So now they're saying, remote ID, that will fix it. Well, I'm saying to the FAA and regulators all around the world, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. And I'm certainly willing to be convinced. All you've got to do to convince me is show me some evidence. Show me some evidence. And the evidence would be an independently peer-reviewed risk assessment which identifies the risks and quantifies the risks. So we can see that your management strategy, this remote ID, is going to solve the problem. But you won't do that. You will not do it. It's not that you can't do it. You've got the resources, you've got the people, you've got the time to do it. You won't do it. And I say, why not? Is it because if you did that risk assessment, it would actually betray the lies you're telling us that this is necessary? Because I don't see any bodies out there. There are no bodies. If these drones, if recreational drone use is so damn dangerous, recreational model flying use is so damn dangerous, why are our streets not littered with bodies? It's because you're lying to us. It's not dangerous. It is intrinsically incredibly safe. Incredibly safe. Yes, there's always the very small possibility that a drone could bring down a manned aircraft. But every year we see plenty of manned aircraft brought down by birds, by bad maintenance, by self-certification on the part of Boeing, and so many other things that are proven to be major, major factors in death in our skies. Why don't you fix those problems before you start addressing a problem that doesn't exist, or you can't prove exists because you won't do the risk assessment? So I'm just saying, please, I'm happy to do what you want me to do as long as you can prove that what you want me to do is going to achieve a result. Because last time you promised something, you didn't deliver. And if you're going to promise again, you can't be too upset if people say, no, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Just deliver the evidence, regulators, show us the risk assessment that justifies this incredible infringement on people's freedoms. Now, as I said a moment ago, one of the problems I see is people going, wow, we've dodged a bullet here. This is so much better than it could have been. No network component. We can fit separate remote ID devices to our existing craft and make them qualify for flying. This is great. I'm saying, no, it's not great at all. This is, again, another strategy that I've seen so many times. Example, you've got a rusty old bucket of a car. You want to sell it. You want to get the best price for it. You know it's only worth $500. But you want $1,000 for it. So what do? You put it on the market for $2,000 and you make it look better than it is. And people will come along. They'll come, $2,000 for a car. They'll come along and go, no, I'm not paying $2,000 for that car. Sorry, mate. And you'll go, okay, make me an offer. And they might go, well, I'll give you $500 for it, which is what its true worth is. And you'll go, well, I'm asking $2,000. How about you give me $1,000? And then the buyer goes, well, $1,000. Geez, I've actually got it for half price. Yeah, I'll buy it for $1,000. So when that happens, the seller gets exactly what they wanted because they started at a high point and they can go down. The buyer thinks, wow, I've got a deal. I'm doing so well because I got this $2,000 car for $1,000, when in reality, you got a rusty wreck worth $500 for twice what it was worth. And that's what's happened with remote ID. The FAA's come in and said, you're going to have network connection. You're going to have, all your craft will have to be manufactured in a certified condition. You won't be able to build your own craft anymore. And of course, what's happened is they've said, yes, we've read all your submissions and we're prepared to move down a bit. We're going to come down, not going to have a network component, and you will be able to fly existing craft with an add-on transmitter. What do you think? And of course, the naive hobbyists amongst us are going, yes, we've got a victory. And the FAA is going, got exactly what we wanted. That's how it works. That is how it works. If you've ever bought or sold a used car, you know that. The fact that so many people in the hobby are naively thinking, we've won a victory. No, you haven't. You're getting a $500 rusty wreck and you're paying $1,000 for it. It's just, no. Perhaps it's because I'm a lot older than most people in the hobby, certainly in the freestyle community these days. And I've been around the block a few times, and I've seen this happen. I've seen it happen so often. And perhaps it's just that you haven't had the life experience that I've had to realize when you're being sold a pup, when you're being ripped off, and you are being so totally ripped off by this remote ID thing. In the UK, in the EU, in the USA, there is no reason on this planet why somebody's model airplane should have to have remote ID. Show me where model airplane have been menacing airports and causing all sorts of disruption to air traffic. They haven't. And to confine them to a little grassy field in the middle of nowhere is not an answer. It's not a solution, because when I was a kid, I didn't fly in little grassy fields in the middle of nowhere. I flew at the school grounds, I flew at the parks, I flew wherever I could, and still nobody died. And that's what's happening today. Planes are much safer than they were when I was a kid. Foamies like this, little propeller at the back. Hey, that's totally safe. You can, and the Outlaw 250 build, I've flown it into myself deliberately, repeatedly, not even a bruise. Because the planes are so much safer now. But no, we've still got to remotely ID these things or consign them to a tiny patch of grass miles from anywhere, out of the way of DHL and Amazon and all the other people that want to use that airspace you guys were using before. And if people can't see this, then I have very little hope for the hobby in years to come. Because we're told these recent changes are all about safety, but no, that doesn't make sense either. Now, until now, if you wanted to fly a drone over people or fly a drone at night, you had to get a waiver. You had to have Part 107 if you're flying it and get a waiver so you could have special permission to fly over people, because it was too dangerous to fly a drone over people, even a little drone, too dangerous to fly them over people. But now the FAA have come along and said, no, you can fly over people now. No, new rules. If you've got remote ID and you've got prop guards, you can fly over people. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, how did that suddenly become safe? How did it suddenly become safe? It's actually, I have to say here and now, people think that I'm a bit of a rebel, but I never fly over third parties with my drones. I'll fly over people that agree to it, but I would never go out in public and fly over people, not even transiting. Or I wouldn't fly over roads, not even transiting if I knew there was traffic around things. I would not do that. It's not safe to do that. It doesn't matter what happens. If someone has a drone falling on their head, at the very least, they're probably going to get a cut or a scratch. I don't want people to get hurt. And these things, drones, they're not 100% reliable. We know that. They crash all the time. Well, not all the time, but they crash at the least expected moments. And I'm not prepared to expose innocent third parties to that kind of risks. And I am the rebel. I'm the guy that says bugger the rules. Yet the FAA says, no, you can do it now. It's all good. As long as you've got remote ID and you've got prop guards and you've sat a little exam or online exam, you're good to go. And I think, what happened to safety? Now, a lot of us have been flying small quads with prop guards, cine whoops and tiny whoops and things like that. And we have had prop guards for a long time. Now the FAA is suddenly saying, well, prop guards are really useful. But in doing so, they are actually making things unsafe. Now, take, for example, if you were using a small cine whoop like the GEP RC Cine Queen 4K, nice little quad. I use that a lot. Some videos on my RC Model Reviews channel. A lot of videos on this channel have been done with that. It's light. It flies very slowly. It's got a reasonably good camera. It's got prop guards. Now, if I'm going to do something commercial, if I want to do a commercial job, I would use that in preference to something heavier and bigger with exposed propellers, because if something goes wrong, there's that extra margin of safety. But in the USA, I would not. If I'm flying under 107, I would have to put a remote ID transmitter on there, which is going to bring the weight up. And it'll make it harder to fly. And if it falls, it's got more mass. It's going to have more energy. If it hits someone on the head, you're reducing the safety by mandating remote ID for commercial operations. And the way they've structured the new rule, you won't see any commercial tiny whoop footage on YouTube. You won't see any tiny whoop footage on YouTube. Gone are when the rule comes into effect. No more tiny whoop footage on YouTube, because the FAA has made it very clear that posting videos with your model to any form of social media constitutes not recreational flying. It's no longer recreational flying if you're posting the footage to YouTube. And if you're not flying recreationally, you're flying under 107. And if you're flying under 107, it doesn't matter how lightweight your craft is, even if it's a tiny Mobula 6, it has to have a remote ID transmitter on it. Now, in a Mobula 6, the remote ID transmitter will weigh more than the drone. So you will not be able to post those videos to YouTube or Instagram without a 107, without the remote ID transmitter, and therefore you won't be able to do it, because your craft probably won't fly very well, if at all, with all that extra weight. And that's making things safer, according to the FAA. So we're being lied to again. And I say again, because remember, registration was supposed to fix this problem, wasn't it? Well, registration will solve all our issues. And everyone signed up for it, and it didn't change a beam. And so now they're saying, oh, remote ID will solve all our problems. And when everyone signs up to that, the next logical step is, gosh, remote ID is in effect, but we're still having problems. I'm sorry, you guys, you'll just have to be out of this airspace completely. There's no room for you because the commercial operators cannot take the risk of you guys flying because you're not, even with remote ID, you're still not doing the right thing. You'll all have to go to those little grassy fields. So when you buy your fancy new Mavic or your fancy new whatever camera drone, all you'll be able to film is grassy fields, miles from anywhere. And you won't even be able to put the footage up on YouTube because then you'd need to get a Part 107. Yeah, it's sometimes called the thin end of the wedge. It's like, you know, imagine your butt crack and there's a little thin wedge. It's called revoking section 336. And then it gets a bit wider with registration. Then it gets a bit wider with remote ID. Finally, that's it. You're split right in half, flying in a grassy field in the middle of nowhere. That's where I see this going. Because it's not, despite what they say, it's not being driven by a need to improve safety. It's not being driven by a need to improve privacy or a need to improve security. It's being driven by a need to get recreational model flyers and drone operators out of the airspace that the companies that form the ARC want to use exclusively for their own purposes. It's very plain, very clear, very obvious. It's been proven with this new remote ID rule. And that privacy one is a great one. It says improve security and privacy. That's the reason for this remote ID bill, unless you happen to be a drone flyer, because part of the remote ID system is it transmits not only the position of your drone, but where you are. It transmits your position. So if someone sees a drone flying and they think, I'd like that drone, they can get their app out, they can see exactly where you're standing, they can walk up to you, pop you on the head, drone returns to home, and away they go with the drone and the transmitter and everything. That's hardly protecting privacy. It's not protecting your privacy as a drone operator at all, or your security, because your position is exposed to everybody, including those who might be bad actors. So again, as I say, it's a lie. It is a lie to say this improves security and privacy, because in the case of the people operating the drones, it does exactly the opposite. So I guess the only other thing I have to discuss is how should the community respond to this? How should we? I mean, as I say, a lot of people have said, oh, it's great, you know, we've only paid $1,000 for a $500 rusty wreck, so we're happy because we're stupid. But I think there has to be a strategy for moving forward. Now, unfortunately, I'm in a very privileged position. My bad luck is my good luck. Today I'm really bad. My hands are awful. But I realized today just how, if I'm not really careful, my own Parkinson's is basically crippling me in terms of flying. And so it's not going to affect me. By the time this gets to New Zealand, I probably won't be flying anymore, so it's not going to be an issue to me. So it's easy for me to sit back and say, do this, do that, because in effect, I wouldn't have to do that because I wouldn't be flying by the time this, even in America, by the time the rule comes in, I probably will not be flying anymore. So I'm reluctant to say, don't comply. You know, I've said it before, but I'm thinking about it. I've been given this a lot of thought over the last few days, and it's easier for me to say, don't comply, stand up to these people and take your fines on the chin like a real man. But very few people are in the privileged position I'm in. And you guys have all got to make sure that you don't get convictions, because that upsets your ability to travel and it affects your ability to get jobs, and fines cost money, it takes food out of the mouths, takes food out of the mouths of your family. So I can't really say that. I can't say that because I would then be responsible for all the bad things that might happen to you. So I don't know. All I can say is that's what I would do in your position. If I was in your position, I would take it on the chin. I would not comply. I would fly safely. Safely would be my number one priority. Safety. Safety of myself, safety of the people who are in the area, safety of everybody on the planet when I'm flying my drone in my model aircraft. And to show you how stupid this is, yesterday here in New Zealand, well, it's summer here in New Zealand, yesterday, New Year's Eve, was a brilliantly fine day, very little wind. Myself and Ron and Bill were out at the flying field here, flying all day. Nobody died. Nobody even got scratched. Nothing got broken. And it's not that we're flying near an airport, we're flying on a damn airport. We're flying on an airport, right? And we're not registered, we don't have remote ID, nothing bad has happened. These things are not essential, they're not important, they're not necessary, right? Unless you're trying to clear the airspace for somebody else who wants it in preference to those who are currently using it. So work it out, work it out. Writing is very clearly on the wall. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. I don't know where the hobby goes from here. It probably goes down a very steep slope. I really do believe this is going to push us down a very steep slope. And the AMA, of course, are pro, oh yes, no, we've got our right to fly in our freers and we'll be good. All the members are safe and well, you know. And I guess from their perspective, yes, they have done a good job for the AMA and its members, or those of its members that like to fly in grassy fields miles from nowhere. But not all AMA members will like to do it. A lot of AMA members fly freestyle FPV, and under this new rule, as it's written, nobody's even sure if FPV is legal anymore, because it says that the pilot in command of the controls must be able to see the model at all times with the naked eye. Put goggles on, you can't do that. So, and there's no mention of a spotter or anything. It's a little bit cloudy because they don't define what visual line of sight is. But the implication is very clear that the pilot who's got the transmitter must be able to see the model at all times, and therefore that would effectively say FPV is no longer allowed under the new remote ID bill. I'm sure that will change. They'd have to change that. They can't just completely wipe FPV off the face of the planet. Or can they? It'd be a great way to get people into the grassy fields, because there's not much fun flying FPV at a grassy field. It's far more fun flying in an urban environment or a park or somewhere where there's obstacles and you can do proximity. Yeah, so if you killed FPV, it's a big step towards keeping all these hobbyists in those little grassy fields miles from anywhere. There you go, that's all I've got to say. I hope you've found that interesting. I'm sure you have comments, so get into my private parts and tell me what you think. And tell me what you're going to do individually. I'd like to know what people are going to do. Do you have a strategy of your own? Is your strategy like mine? Do you have a better idea? I'm sure someone's got a better idea than my ideas. I'm old and feeble. My brain's fading. You guys got bright brains. You'll work it out. So where do we go? First of all, what is the future of the hobby? Does it have a future? And what about the future of the more recent arms of the hobby, like FPV freestyle and things like that? How's that going to survive? How are people going to dive bandos with this? And tiny whoops. What's going to happen with tiny whoops? No more tiny whoop videos on YouTube. And is this just a knee-jerk thing? I have a feeling that what's going to happen is, in a few years' time, all these people well, first of all, let me go back a bit. Another story. The reason we are where we are now is because a lot of people have seen an opportunity. They've said, ooh, drone delivery, drones, ooh, this up-and-coming technology, we could make money out of this. And if you look around at so many of the drone companies that are claiming we need this airspace, a great many of them are not making any money. They're not providing any real service. They're not doing a thing except going out and getting funding for their wonderful ideas, drone delivery ideas and this, that and the other with drones and flying taxis and that sort of stuff. It's all pie in the sky at the moment. But there's an eager investor community who also think, ooh, it's an emerging technology. If we get in now, we'll make a lot of money. So it's very easy for companies to say, we're a drone company and we've got a good idea, give us your money. And because investors do, they throw millions at them. And all you've got to do to qualify is do some wonderful 3D renderings, perhaps a little bit of VFX showing your imaginary, fictitious, not yet built craft flying through an urban landscape. And investors come along and go, yeah, take my money, because they want to earn a lot of money. In the case of emerging technologies, there's often a lot of money to be made. Computers, a lot of people made a fortune in computers, home computers, personal computers, when they became an emerging technology in the early 80s, the late 1970s, early 80s. Many fortunes were made on that. Look at Bill Gates. How do you think he got to be the world's third richest man? So a lot of investors think, we'll do that too. We'll jump on this bandwagon. So they're throwing money at these drone companies. And so there's this perception that, wow, with all this money going into commercial drone companies, commercial drones are going to be big. They're going to be huge. The skies will be filled with them. And so we've got to make space for it and so forth. But I'll tell you what's going to happen. I honestly believe that this is going to be like, there's going to be a drone crash, not just a drone crashing, but the whole drone, the concept of this ubiquitous drone delivery and flying taxis, it's not going to fly. It's not going to fly because there's so many factors that work against commercial drone deliveries. For a start, weather. You can only use a commercial drone for delivery when it's relatively fine and it's not blowing a gale. And in a lot of places in the world, that just doesn't happen. Weather is a really bad factor, and you can't control the weather. So what good is a delivery service? Because drone deliveries are supposed to be quicker, more efficient. But if you have to wait 2 days because the wind's too strong, they're not at all efficient or prompt or anything. So yeah, and then you've got the issues of safety. Now, we were told, hey, you can't fly over people with your drones. But now we're being told, hey, yeah, you can fly over people with your drones. Why do you think that is? It's because the regulators have said, well, we can't actually have people delivering stuff unless they fly over people, because, you know, if you're going in an urban or a suburban landscape, you've got to fly over people to get where you need to go. So we'll make that legal. We'll make that safe now. We'll change our minds. It's not unsafe anymore. It's safe because the commercial operators need to be able to do that. So what's going to happen, though, is in a couple of 3 years' time, the investors are going to start going, we gave you millions of dollars. Where's our return? All you've been doing is putting fancy water features in your flash offices and buying yourself Porsches. Where's the money? Where's our return? Where's our return on investment? And these drone companies, to date, they've been able to say, oh, well, you know, we can't start yet because the regulations are not in place to enable us to use that airspace without dealing with the hobby people. We're getting rid of the hobby people. Once the airspace is clear for us, then you'll see a return on your investment. But that's not what's going to happen because the airspace is going to be clear of hobbyists. We've got this remote ID now. That's going to do the job, isn't it? That's what we've been promised. So now all the drone deliveries will take off, but they won't because it's just commercially not viable. It is much cheaper to hire someone with a bike or a scooter to deliver a package in an urban environment. They can weave through the traffic right along the footpath. They can go from one part of the town to another part far more quickly, more safely, and more cost effectively than a drone ever could. Ever could. So that's where you're going to have your urban delivery. And even when we do have automated drone delivery of stuff, it's going to be like this. It's going to be ground-based vehicles because we already have autonomous vehicles out there. We've got Teslas and all sorts of things that drive themselves. The technology is already very well evolved for this, and it's very safe. One of these vehicles can drive around the city day, night, wind, rain, whatever. You can put snow tires in it and use it in the snow if you want to. And if it breaks down, what does it do? It just stops on the side of the road. It doesn't fall out of the sky and hit someone on the head and kill them. No, it just stops on the side of the road. And even more importantly, your drone can only carry, 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds, unless it's huge, and then it becomes even more expensive and complicated and unsafe. So you can only deliver one package at a time with the drone. It's got to fly all the way to the customer or the delivery site and then fly all the way back, and you've got to change the batteries, and you've got to fly it out and so that doesn't even come close to the efficiency, the cost efficiency of something like this, where you can have a land-based drone that might have 100 packages in it. DHL can say, right, we're delivering in this area, I'll load them up with little packages, and that little thing will trundle off. And you'll be sitting there in your office or in your home, and you get a little text on your phone that says, delivery due in 2 minutes, this is your PIN number. And you'll wait 2 minutes, the little vehicle will pull up outside your house or your office, you'll rush outside, you'll key in your PIN number, and a little door will open, and there's your consignment. You pick it up, you walk back inside. It's safe, it's secure, it's cost effective. That is the future of drone delivery, not flying in the sky. So what's going to happen in 3, 4, 5 years' time is this apparently valuable airspace that we, the hobby, are using, they'll realize it's not so valuable as we thought it was. It's like, these fleets of drones just aren't happening. They're all driving around the streets. And we're still paying people on bicycles and scooters to deliver packages. Flying drones, they're really not that practical at all, are they? No, they're not. In that case, we might have an opportunity. But the big worry to me is that once regulations are put in place, it's very hard to get them rescinded, very hard to get regulations unwound. It's better to not have regulation in the first place, to protect your freedoms, than to try and claw them back later. Because you can imagine that in 5 years' time, when everybody wakes up to the fact that drone delivery is not a thing, it's never going to be a thing, it's just not going to happen, then the regulators and the governments are going to say, damn, how are we going to make money out of this airspace? We've got a shortfall now. We're expecting to have a lot of money made out of this airspace. I know, we'll let the hobbyists back in and we'll charge them an annual fee. $500 a year to fly your toy plane in a park or a school. And so the hobby will still be burdened because they're not going to give up that revenue that they're counting on, the taxes, because no one, including the commercial operators, will be able to fly in that 0 to 400 foot airspace for free. That's why they talked about this traffic management system. It's a pay to fly. If you're a commercial operator, you want to fly from point A to point B with your drone to deliver something, you'll have to pay, just like manned aircraft do when they're flying through controlled airspace, pay a fee for flying there. The air is being sold. And so if they're not getting any revenues from commercial operators, because there is no commercial operation of any scale, then they might try and squeeze it out of the hobbyists, and it'll come out of our pockets if any hobbyists are still around. So there we are. This was supposed to be finished 10 minutes ago, and I carried on. But that's it. That's what good rants do. You never finish a good rant. It's always going on perpetually. But that is the end of this rant, be it good or not. And I don't know what we do now, where we go. All I know is I'm just going to carry on flying safely for as long as I'm able to do so. And I'm proud of my record of never hurting anybody, never breaking anyone's stuff, and never endangering people. That's just me. That's just what I do. I don't need to be registered. I don't need to have extra weight in my models, making them unsafe, broadcasting my position to people who may wish to do bad things to me. Don't need that. Not going to have it. Won't happen. That's the future of the hobby for me, for as long as I can fly. So thank you for watching. Now, this is my first video of 2021. I was hoping it'd be a more upbeat video than this, but hey, it's summer here now. More flying coming. Yay. Interesting. I'm going to do a video shortly. I built a lithium ion pack for one of my 5-inch mini quads. I got 20 minutes flight time out of a 5-inch mini quad. Seriously, 20 minutes. It's amazing. I'm absolutely amazed at what the technology, where the technology is moving. With a LiPo, with a 1300 4-cell LiPo, I was getting at best 7 minutes. Now I'm getting almost 3 times that. Fantastic. Yeah, no, I'm not punching out or anything, but anyway, that's another video. That's just for another video. There we go. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks to all the people that support the channel. It's very much appreciated, and I will continue crusading for the hobby in the face of onerous and overreaching regulation around the world. Let's not forget, this is a video about America, but in the UK, the same rules, pretty much the same rules are coming in the UK. And again, pretty much people are saying, oh, it's great, you know, it's fine, we can retrofit our models. Oh, you know, we'll give this freedom away because we could have lost a bigger one. No, you don't. That's not the way you deal with it. You don't give any freedoms away unless it's absolutely essential, and demand proof before you give that. You know, if people are claiming that it's going to do this, get the proof. Show that they've done their homework and they're not just feeding you a pack of lies they've plucked out of their tiny little bureaucratic backsides. Bye for now.